AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. I think I'm the one that coined Let's Get Feisty. Representative Sandra Feist is kind enough to join us. 41B is the district. I believe, off the top of my head, is it St. Anthony, Columbia Heights, New Brighton, and Hilltop? Is that correct, Representative?
That is correct.
Dang, sometimes I'm good at this. Yeah. Welcome to the show. Of course, we had you on Democrat of the Day 2 years ago. Glad to have you back. How are things going for you?
Things are good. Things are good. I was excited to come back because when you first interviewed me, I didn't have any accomplishments, and I had all sorts of talking points and opinions and perspectives, but now I can actually tell you what I've been up to.
Well, it was an absolute delight. I remember when you were running your campaign, and I just said, we got to get you into St. Paul. I mean, you are, first of all, probably the coolest representative up there. I'm dead serious about that. But it's as well, you had some great points here. So let's actually refresh ourselves. You had a year there. What do you feel? Let's talk a little bit about your accomplishments in the first year you were there in St. Paul.
Yeah. Well, I was able to author 5 bills that were passed into law, which I'm very proud of. And those include several bills that I feel like, having been there, I made a difference, that if another person had been there, it might not have happened. So one of those bills that I carried was called the Veterans Restorative Justice Act. And that bill created a pathway for veterans charged with certain low-level offenses that were directly related to a service-related trauma or injury to, instead of receive punitive sentencing, receive a restorative sentencing path. So they receive treatment for things like PTSD, addiction, domestic violence, interventions. And so I'm really proud of that. I think it's a really important bill that will support our veterans and their families.
Well, and that's, if I can add, I'm a veteran, U.S. Army, and the, I think what I really like about that, there is a story there. There's what happened. You have a veteran, the PTSD. I saw it firsthand with veterans, and you see it. You go to the VA, you see the people over there that are dealing with the PTSD, and sometimes bad things happen, and I think you have to take that into account. That they're sometimes just locking someone up in a jail is not the option. That getting them the treatment they need and helping them get on a better path of correction is the way to go. And I commend you on that. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I would go so far as to say locking someone up is almost never the right answer. If we want to truly help people achieve their full potential and get on the right path, and if we want to protect public safety, then I think that we need to expand restorative justice to most types of sentencing.
Absolutely. Let's talk. What are some of the other bills that you got passed this last session?
Yeah, I authored a bill around something called the U visa certification process. That's for immigrant victims of serious crimes. And I'm an immigration attorney. And so I knew that there was this huge issue where the process requires law enforcement to be involved. And sometimes the public safety departments didn't really know what they were looking at. And so they would just ignore the requests for the certification. And so I worked with law enforcement and domestic violence advocates. And was able to get this bill passed. It requires consistent timelines for turnaround. So when law enforcement receives a request to, confirm that the victim worked with them to investigate or prosecute the crime, they must respond now within 90 days or 14 days if the immigrant is in removal proceedings. And I was able to do that with bipartisan support, working alongside many stakeholders. And I'm really proud. I feel like it took an immigration attorney's understanding of what this bill did and how the visa process works to build that coalition.
Do you feel?
And I know every day it helps people because I see it on my listserv of immigration lawyers.
I talked to Senator John Hoffman the other day, and he talked about how, you sometimes you just have to sit down and talk with him. With your experience, talk a little bit about that. I imagine there were some Republicans who were like, no. It's like, let me explain what my experience is and why this is an important thing. Did you have conversations like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I actually had a lot of them, which I think was really important. When I first presented the bill, it was passed to the next committee down party lines. By the time I presented it in Judiciary, which was our final stop, it passed with unanimous support. And I was able to explain, this is something that protects public safety. It allows public police departments to protect immigrant communities, to investigate crime in all of our communities. And it was able to also address concerns that we were expanding rights under immigration laws at the state level, which was not what we were doing. And those conversations were really open and candid and positive. And it was very affirming for me to work across the aisle like that on a bill that could have been pretty contentious and was not.
You are part of the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Reform Finance Policy Committee as well. Yeah. So I imagine that gave you also the springboard to be able to bring, in this case, in both of those bills, a good perspective to bring it into realization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kind of say that I've divided myself into my two halves. As a mom, I care a lot about education and addressing the opportunity gap, and so two of my committees are in that realm. And then my other two committees are in the public safety and judiciary realm. So I'm trying to look at criminal legal reform and protecting public safety. And so, yeah, those are kind of the two spheres that I function in.
Success on the judicial side. Were there any bills you were working on the education side?
Yes. I authored a bill to expand funding around suicide prevention training in schools. That is a critically important issue. We actually just today in our education finance committee, we heard presentations by the Department of Education and NAMI talking about the urgent need for interventions and support around student mental health and teacher mental health. And so I was really very pleased that we were able to expand that funding last session. It definitely came at a very important time.
And it is. And I think that, and boy, especially in the last 2 years with what these kids have gone through, and everyone, teachers, kids, parents, the academics during an age of pandemic is not easy. Having better mental health programs available for the educators, the administrators, for the kids, for the parents. That is such an important thing that we need to make sure we're putting more money into. As a matter of fact, I can make an argument. There's like 4 or 5 things we could do immediately that would be a very big boon, because this is something, it's not just inner city kids. It's not just rural kids. It's every kid across the state.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And as a mom, my kids are in 4th and 6th grade. I see it in my own home. This is so urgent. And the Department of Education really brought home how the unmet mental health needs are impacting students' ability to truly succeed in their academics. So it's all intertwined.
We are looking at a new session here as we get into play here. Of course, you've got to deal with the Republican Senate, but you do have the governor on your side here. What are the things that you're looking for? I mean, you got some great accomplishments, man, some fantastic accomplishments, if I might say, in your first year. What are some of the things that you're looking at in the second year as priorities for you to come out as far as bills and as legislation you're working on?
Yeah, so I've got kind of short-term and long-term goals. I have a number of bipartisan bills that I hope to pass this year. One of them is the Student Data Privacy Act, and that would bring our student data privacy laws from the 1970s, when student data was information on a piece of paper in a locked filing cabinet, into the 21st century when data is in the cloud, it's in the hands of private for-profit companies, and it's in school-issued devices being remotely monitored by schools when students are not in school. And so there's a lot of things that we just need to update our framework to address in terms of how student data is handled. And that issue is bipartisan, and it also has really significant equity aspects to it. We found that when schools use algorithm-based keyword monitoring software, that results in disproportionate disciplinary action against students of color and low-income students. We've also seen that those types of intervention, when they see keywords that imply that there might be a mental health concern, that actually has been proven to undermine student trust in the school and have a negative impact on student mental well-being. And so we're just trying to address this. It's become an incredibly pervasive issue because of COVID and the amount of distance learning students are doing. And this bill has been around for a while, and this is an issue that finally the public is paying attention to, and we've got a bill. I introduced it last year, and it's a really important bill. We would be the first in the nation to pass something like it, and it's a priority for me this year.
All right. What about, I mean, and if I can ask, and obviously sometimes I ask this question, and some people say, well, you've heard what I'm doing. I'm doing it for all students, including in my district. But is there anything specific for 41B that you're saying, you know what, this is, I was talking to the people that are down in Burnsville, and obviously the Burnsville Center, not a lot of people down there, not a lot of businesses in there working on trying to do some business incentive things. Is there anything in 41B that you're looking around and you're saying, you know what, this needs to be addressed immediately?
Yeah. Well, so also in the student realm, I authored a bill around what's called period poverty. So students came to me and they said that we have a problem where students are being charged for menstrual products at school. And we know that period poverty actually leads to students missing on average about a week of school per year, and that absenteeism directly impacts their ability to succeed in school. And one of my constituents, a student at Columbia Heights High School, told me that when she needed a menstrual product, they actually charged her 25 cents, and she didn't have it on her. And they just added her name to a list of kids who were in debt to the school. And she was able to address that at her school, but wanted to advocate for all students across Minnesota having that same access. And so we have a really awesome student-led movement around this bill that would require schools to provide menstrual products in student bathrooms for grades 4 through 12. And it is funded because I don't believe in unfunded mandates.
Well, it's a shame you have to, and because I can say this. My God, how many school districts have free water bottles when the football game's on, or they
or toilet paper?
Exactly.
Right?
This is a basic health thing. And,
exactly.
and can I also make the point I imagine the staff around this is not exactly eager to have this conversation of, do you have any money on you at this point? So this is just bad education policy on that local level. This is a case where, this is a no-brainer because I guess this is still the world we live in today. This is not being taken care of. How in the hell? All right. Well, good for you.
When I tell people, they're like, what? Like, that's not something that's already provided. So basic need not being met 50% of the students here in Minnesota. So we're going to address it this year.
Well, that's a good thing. I will bring up one thing here that's it's going to be interesting. Clearly, the Republican in their strategy this upcoming election cycle is going to be crime, crime, crime. I mean, they put out a bill about funding scholarships, basically, and by the looks of it, almost making police education free in the state for police officers. Which heaven forbid you do that for everyone in this state, but okay, fine. Yeah. But this is really going to be their point. It's kind of one of those things where are you seeing the Republicans push particularly, and where do you see, where the House is going to go in regards to public safety policy?
Yeah. Well, I've definitely, every once in a while, I get looped into Republican Twitter because I get tagged by this Crime Watch hashtag or something. And they definitely are just hammering home. We need to get the bad guys and put more people in jail. We need to prosecute more harshly. So that's definitely the drum that they are beating. On the DFL side, what we're looking at is a more holistic approach to public safety, one that invests in sustainable community-based violence prevention programs. So on our very first day of the Public Safety Committee hearing, we had a really good discussion of the first portion of a bill around innovating public safety that Representative Cedric Frazier introduced. And an expert, Professor Patrick Sharkey from Princeton, came and testified. And I tweeted this because I was like, oh my God, everyone needs to hear this. There is no data that says incarcerating more people makes us safer. And so we need to be looking at other ways to protect public safety.
Representative,
follow the data.
Representative, if I may make the point, as I've been watching the Republican Party, and this is me saying this is not you. It has nothing to do with crime. It has to do with who they're locking up. And that is kind of what that's the unsaid thing that's going on here. It's about who they're going after. Because if you're really against crime, trust me, rural Minnesota right now, there are meth labs all over the place. Meth is a really, truly epidemic crisis in rural Minnesota. They don't talk about that. They don't seem to care about that. They can't stop talking about North Minneapolis. Gee, I wonder why. So that's me saying it. If I can bring in Republicans and where they're coming after, you're on the education policy. It's clear there's three things here Republicans want to do. One, they want to start teaching the whitewashed version of American history as actual history. They want, we've seen in other states the banning of books, and there have already been some Republicans in the state saying some books should be removed from school shelves. But as well, also the movement towards basically gutting all public school funding and giving it to a handful of private business owners who run charter schools and private schools. So I imagine all three of those are going to be no-goes for you in the House Education Committees, right?
Yeah, not so much. That's the nice thing about having the gavel is that we don't have to hear those bills. So, I feel for my colleagues in the Senate who have to sit through hearings on these types of efforts because they are really distressing and depressing. As a former ACLU board member, it just hurts my heart to hear about banning books. Yeah. And limiting the ways like they are in Texas that teachers can even teach history. It's all profoundly sad. I actually taught sixth grade civics all day recently at my son's middle school, and it was just a joy. And they had me set up in the library, and so in between classes, I was just looking through the books that they're reading, and they just really are surrounded, at least here in the Mounds View School District, which is where my kids go, by a wealth of perspectives and just a lot of thought-provoking information that can help them to really learn about the world around them in a way that will make them good human beings and good leaders when they grow up.
Representative Sandra Feist, I really like you. I want you in St. Paul for a long time to come. You are 41B is the district. You're hearing this. This is just quality leadership. And this is when I was talking last hour about fighting back with the Republicans and punching back on these things. Sandra Feist, she does that as a House rep, and we need to have more of that. So this is a no-brainer. Help her get back into St. Paul for another term. What is the website for people to go to if they would like to find out how they can donate and volunteer or help out your campaign?
Yep, my website is feistforhouse.org.
Feist for House, FEISTFORHOUSE.org, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
I'll link to everything on social media a little bit later on. Representative, an absolute privilege. Come back anytime. By all means, come back anytime. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be paying attention to some of these bills that we were talking about. If they do get passed, I'm calling you. We're going to have you on. We'll talk about. We'll have a nice little celebration about good things happening in St. Paul. Okay.
Awesome. I have several bipartisan bills that I'm really hopeful for and cautiously optimistic for, so I look forward to that conversation.
Absolutely. Representative Sandra Feist, let's get feisty. That's what I'll say it again. 41B. Help her out if you can. Feistforhouse.org. We'll take a break, wrap up the show when we do return. It's the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950.